world. Australia's Prime Minister Kevin Rudd flew to East Timor on Friday to pledge support after an assassination attempt on the country's president, Jose Ramos-Horta. In a 3-hour visit, Rudd held talks with Prime Minister Xanana Gusmao, who narrowly escaped injury when gunmen ambushed his car on Monday. Rudd later flew to the northern Australia city of Darwin to visit Ramos-Horta, who is recovering from hospital gunshot wounds. The situation in East Timor has remained calm since Monday, despite fears of protests. A state of emergency declared by Prime Minister Gusmao remains in place. Gusmao was unharmed in the attacks, but rebel leader Alfredo Reynado was killed in the gunfight at Ramos-Horta's house. The man who claims to have taken command of rebel soldiers after Reynado's death, former Army Lieutenant Gastão Salsinha, told Reuters his supporters would fight if attacked by international forces. Australia has 1,000 troops in East Timor alongside 1,600 United Nations police. East Timor's Prosecutor General has issued several arrest warrants in connection with the attacks.
Constancio Pinto is the charge d'affaires at the Timorese Embassy in the United States, joining us now from Washington, D.C. We're also joined on the phone by Allan Nairn, journalist and activist who has covered East Timor for years. Constancio Pinto, first, our condolences just on the tragedy in your country, just the shooting, although, of course, Jose Ramos-Horta is alive. What is his condition in the Australian hospital?
Based on the latest information, he's recovering. He had the fourth operation yesterday, I think, but the doctors are satisfied with the progress, so it's good news. And the doctors saying that he will need a couple of weeks, 6 weeks or so, for him to get out from the induced coma, and also 6 months or so to be recovered. But this is just a speculation. But I think it's good, in good condition, and it's a good news for us, for East Timorese.
Constancio Pinto, can you explain what you understand happened on Monday morning in East Timor?
Well, I was out of home when I got the phone call from my colleague here in Washington saying that the president was attacked, and there was mourning there, and I was surprised that he was attacked. He was wounded, and then later on we also heard that President Prime Minister Xanana Gusmao was also attacked on his way to work. So to me, it was a shock that the Reynado and his followers are doing that to the two men who work closely with him and try to settle the issues which is he involved in a peaceful manner. So I was shocked, and the motives of this we don't know. It's still under investigation. And
is there any indication that the conspiracy around the attacks was more widespread than a few people, or any sense that it was part of a larger plot?
Well, there's some speculation that there is strong political motives behind it, but I don't think so, because I think Reynado was frustrated because he has been criticizing the government, blaming everyone, being responsible for what happened in 2006. What I think you know, the violence that erupted between the soldiers and the police force. But in the end, the situation was dragged on, and I think Reynado just probably.
What was that division over? What was the violence caused by in 2006?
Well, 2006 it was a violence between the soldiers and the police. It started from allegations of the soldiers from the west of East Timor being what have I said? Ill-treated in the military, so I in terms of promotion and so on, and So it was a very complicated issue. It was in fact an institutional issue, but complicated. So that's why it caused such terrible violence in 2006, where 30 people were killed.
Constancio Pinto,
Yeah.
before we go to Allan Nairn, I wanted to turn to an interview that I did with Jose Ramos-Horta in Dili, the capital of East Timor. It was the week that East Timor was winning its independence, celebrating its independence on May 20th, 2002, after a quarter of a century of brutal Indonesian rule. The Nobel Peace Prize-winning former journalist and anti-occupation activist Ramos-Horta had returned to East Timor after more than 2 decades in exile. He was the country's first foreign minister. I asked Jose Ramos-Horta how he felt about the historic occasion of East Timor's independence.
Great, although also apprehensive, because the task is enormous. The challenges are enormous. We have to handle so many issues at the same time. Setting up the government, consolidating institutions, negotiations with Australia, with Indonesia. We will soon open up the maritime boundary discussions with Indonesia, with Australia, looking at the domestic challenges to keep the peace, create jobs.
All the groups that helped in different places around the world, what do you see as the role of solidarity with East Timor now? Do you see they have a place? Where do you think they can be the most effective?
Well, first let me say that from the very beginning in my discussions planning for the independence celebrations, I have stated that and I have raised it in the Council of Ministers, and everybody unanimously agree that we should have a brainstorming discussion with the solidarity movement. Obviously, solidarity movement will not be, working for the government, as in the past it was, very intimately working with the resistance. Now we are going to be in different role, but the solidarity movement will have an important role in helping this country continue to mobilize resources, working with everybody, with NGOs, with the government whenever necessary, and trying to help us being a debt-free nation, so that at least there is one country in the world that is not saddled by debt, and that's our determination. Whether we succeed or not will depend on our national policies and international support.
So how will countries be dissuaded from doing the kinds of things that were done to the East Timorese, like the U.S. military, the U.S. government supporting the Indonesian military in the genocide?
Well, they just have to look themselves at the mirror, ask themselves whether what they are doing is wrong or right. I try often to look myself in the mirror and ask what I'm doing is wrong or right.
Jose Ramos-Horta in May 2002. He later was elected Prime Minister of East Timor and then President of East Timor. He now lies in a Darwin, Australia hospital bed, the victim of an assassination attempt. We're with Constancio Pinto, charge d'affaires. He's in Washington, D.C. Allan Nairn joins us on the phone, journalist and activist who's long covered East Timor. Allan, your thoughts today?
Well, the attempt on Ramos-Horta was a terrible thing. And some of the things that are being said about it by foreign countries, I think, distort the situation in a way. Some are saying Timor is a failed state, that here the international community has been pouring all this money into Timor, and all they get out of it is chaos. I think those comments distort the situation. First of all, the idea of the failed state. It's true that Timor is failing, in a sense, to control its territory, and that's bad. But I think a serious definition of a failed state would involve 2 basic responsibilities of any state. I mean, one is they have to obey their own murder laws, so they shouldn't be killing civilians or backing the killings of civilians overseas. And 2, they shouldn't be letting people die preventively. People die of hunger, disease that could be easily prevented. On the first count, the Timorese government has not been killing civilians occurred during the Indonesian occupation, where a third of the population has slaughtered. On the second count, the Timorese government has been falling short because there still is hunger in the countryside. They have oil revenue now that should be used to immediately feed everyone, and that hasn't happened in part because of bickering, petty bickering within the Timorese government. And I think the old generation of independence leaders that is leading Timor now should either now settle their differences, feed the people, or step aside and let new, fresher leadership take over. But if you're